Welcome and thank you for attending the Tucson Association of REALTORS Economic Forecast. Today's forecast will cover our local and national markets with a quick look back and a quick look into the future. We're privileged to have two very knowledgeable, very respected, and very charismatic economists to share their opinions with us. First is Dr. George Hammond from the University of Arizona. Dr. Hammond is a research professor in the Eller College. He teaches in the online MBA program and publishes research on economic and workforce development. He holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Colorado and a PhD from Indiana University.
Okay, now my job here today is to talk to you about the outlook for Arizona and Tucson. And the way I'm going to do that is by first giving you a sense of where we are at the moment. And I'm going to take some time here to put us in perspective with the national economy. I want to take a minute and kind of explain the title on my talk, right? Battling Headwinds. And our growth has been slow, I think, for two major reasons. And these are the two headwinds that we'll discuss. And one of those headwinds is what's going on with the construction sector. Right? It's really hard to see Arizona getting back anywhere near the growth rates that we've seen in the past without construction and residential activity really getting much stronger. The second major headwind is related to federal fiscal drag. And we've seen this in a couple of different ways. And I'm going to take some time and talk to you about one way that doesn't get as much press, and this is federal procurement spending. And we'll see that that has a big impact on national growth, state growth, particularly here in Tucson. But it's not all going to be talk about these headwinds, because we've actually picked up a tailwind over the past couple of months, and that's the gas price dividend. And I'll take a few minutes and I'll give you a little bit of a sense of what that may mean for Arizona and Tucson going forward. One way we give you information is through our online magazine. It's a quarterly magazine called Arizona's Economy. Second thing we're really proud of is our smartphone app called Arizona's Economy. What's cool about this is that we are the only center in the country that has created a smartphone app. And what this does is it provides you with the latest data for Arizona, Phoenix, Tucson, all Arizona counties with comparable data for the US. The University of Arizona, the Southern Arizona Leadership Council, and the Community Foundation for Southern Arizona got together and we developed and launched the Making Action Possible dashboard. And this is full of useful economic, social, and economic indicators that can help you put what's going on in Southern Arizona in perspective. Right? So the point of this website is to provide the Southern Arizona community with a trusted source of information that you can use to measure progress and inspire action. Now let's talk a little bit more about what's going on with the Arizona economy. Arizona and Tucson continue to grow. We're adding jobs, we're adding residents, our income is rising. The catch here is that that growth is slow, it feels slow. So let's talk in a little bit more detail. This graph shows you over the year job growth for the US, Phoenix, Tucson, and the rest of the state. Notice that black line, that's Phoenix job growth. Phoenix was growing a lot faster than the national average during 2012 into 2013, but recently that growth has really slowed significantly. Notice that Tucson is completely different. Tucson's job growth in 2012 was right around the national average. But as we get into 2013 and continues into 2014, Tucson's over-the-year job growth much slower than Phoenix, much slower than the national average. And what's driving that, I think, is that federal fiscal drag. Now, I like to also track employment trends using what I call these job replacement rates. And what these job replacement rates show you are the percent of jobs lost during the Great Recession that have been replaced. So a quick example, Arizona lost 300,000 jobs roughly during the Great Recession. So far during expansion, we've added back 200,000 jobs, and that gives us a job replacement rate of 2/3 or 67%. So let's talk about these headwinds that the state and the local areas have been facing. And in terms of construction activity, housing permits tells the story pretty well. So for Tucson, housing permits peaked in the neighborhood of 12,000 at an annual rate. During the downturn, falls all the way down to 2,000. We get a bounce back in 2013, and then things kind of stabilize. So a little bit of a rebound that looks like we've hit a plateau. And you get a somewhat similar picture out of the house price data. Big house price declines. Again, the median house price for Tucson is the red line. Big declines during the downturn. We hit bottom, things start to rise again, and then it looks like we're slowing down a bit. So the outlook is good. Tucson is growing. It's growing slowly. I think that the pieces are in place for our growth to gradually accelerate. Emphasis on gradually. So this gives you a picture to go with that basic story. Now, Tucson here is shown by the blue bars, U.S. the red bars, so you can tell that at the moment, the U.S. economy is growing a lot faster than Tucson in terms of job growth. Forecast is for Tucson to gain momentum while the U.S. gradually loses momentum. So overall, our currently slow growth gradually accelerates. We're not headed back to a boom. We're not probably headed back to the kind of growth rates we saw during the past 30 years, but it is better growth than we're currently experiencing. If you're interested in border issues, we got you covered there too. Brand new website that will tell you everything you need to know on both sides of the border about what's going on with that cross-border trade and economic growth. So for Tucson, it's growth in the short run, gradually accelerating growth.
Thank you, Dr. Hammond. For NAR, Dr. Yoon appears often in the national print and broadcast media to comment on real estate market trends. He's testified before Congress. He speaks at forums and forecasting panels across the country, including Harvard University Industrial Economists Council. USA Today has named him one of the nation's top 10 economic forecasters. In my book, all of that makes him a national media rock star. Thank you. He's a graduate of Purdue University who holds a PhD from the University of Maryland. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Lawrence Yoon.
By 2016, Tucson job growth rate will easily outpace the national growth. So let's look at the national economic picture, and what we are beginning to see is that the economy is really beginning to roll along. One looks at that blue bar point, and this is GDP, which is a most comprehensive measurement of economic activity, more precisely total production in America. And second quarter, third quarter, it really started to burst out, meaning that 4.5% GDP growth, 5% growth. These are, by any economist's standards, a very solid, robust expansion. Because of that, the jobs in the U.S. as a total is coming back nicely. 12 million job gains from the low point after losing 80 million jobs. So this is what Dr. Hammond mentioned, that the U.S. has already recovered all the job that has been lost. Now we are on top of that. Tucson, not yet, or Phoenix, not yet, because you went to the hole much deep, you dug yourself much deeper. Now, the future job prospects also look good because the leading indicator for future job growth is how many people are the companies laying off. And companies are not laying off that many people anymore, which means they are in a clear hiring mode. So this job growth is likely to continue. So job growth, I think, is one can feel very confident job growth nationwide will continue. Nationwide job growth always filter into the state economies. And as a result of job creation, the unemployment rate is now back down to, I think, 5.6 or 5.7%. And this is a job picture in the whole state of Arizona. You are not back up to the peak yet, so probably slower expansion compared to nation, but moving in the right direction. Moving in the right direction. And on top of this, household net worth. Your lifetime achievement. Everything that you have accumulated over your lifetime. All the assets, savings, minus all the debt accumulation. Your net worth, lifetime achievement of everyone all combined in America is easily record high by far. But the survey of Main Street America are saying that I don't feel it. So you show me the data, but I don't feel it. Now, regarding economic data that I showed you, there's no manipulation. It's the same methodology that government officials, statisticians in Washington have been using again and again and again. There's no manipulation to it. However, let me also show you other non-manipulated data. So these are all factual data, same methodology, that may show a little different picture as to why we may not be feeling this good roaring times, all-time high in the net worth. First, Tucson economy specifically is lagging behind, so you already know that. But I think it's going to surpass national growth rate by 2016, maybe even 2015. That's a possibility, even though that sequestration, on, especially on military spending, may hold back some part. Well, this is the actual production activity, not in the growth rate, but actual production. So that red line, beginning part is the actual, and then you see a little fork that diverges. And what's happening in that diversion is, blue line shows what we are actually experiencing. We went through a great recession, and now we're in an expansion, but we are not consistent in expansion, so the average growth is 2.2%, below national average. Then I've got a hypothetical 3% growth line, historical average. So you see a gap that is opening up, gap. So we are below that potential. So let me just do this two charts. Rental population, rising. Homeowner population not rising. Now you as a business practitioner, you may say, well, let me look at the business angle from this picture. And you may say, well, if I have a rental property, then I can easily find a tenant, I can get the rental income, that will be my retirement portfolio. So if you think this way, all good. Everyone are entitled to think how they can improve themselves and looking at the opportunities. But from societal point of view, when you look at this chart of rental population rising, homeowner population not rising, and home ownership rate essentially at a 20-year low, you begin to say, is America changing? Is this good for America? So you begin to question this. So even though you may be a homeowner, you see some of your family members who are stuck renting, and therefore you don't feel it. So you may begin to feel some of it, but you sympathize with some of your family members because they are stuck as being renters. So that's why Americans are saying that I don't feel this recovery, because we have huge rise in rental population and homeowner population declining. And it is at a time when home values are rising. 3 years ago, live interview to one of the most successful financial investors of all time, Warren Buffett, on CNBC. Question to Warren Buffett: where should Americans put their money? And Warren Buffett 3 years ago said, buy real estate. It's going to go up. Well, in hindsight, he was absolutely correct. Because real estate is going up, the net worth of homeowners are beginning to rise. Now, green one was a bubble wealth, although you have to discount that. But now the home values are rising, homeowner wealth is rising. Now, some homeowners have zero, who are underwater, but there are many homeowners who have paid off. So when their home values rise, that's their wealth. So at a time when homeowner wealth is rising, while renters, after all the data measurements, renters essentially have very little, 1 year after the other. So if you have a rising rental population, declining homeowner population at a time when home values are rising, that means America has become more unequal than before. So this is why Americans are not feeling it, because now we have become much more unequal now than compared to before. So the reason why you are not feeling it is all those charts that I showed you, and essentially all related to, and this is why I'm in perfect agreement with Dr. Hammond, slow real estate market recovery. That is holding back as to why people do not feel, and that is holding back economic recovery potential of getting that 3%. We are short by 3% because real estate recovery has been modest, moderate, not back to normal recovery. Housing is cyclical, goes up, and sometimes it goes down, then it goes up. But when it goes up, it tends to be a multi-year phenomenon. 5 years, 7 years, sometimes over a decade phenomenon. This time around, we had 2 years of recovery after the sharp downturn in terms of unit sales, and 2014 was somewhat disappointing because it did not increase in terms of unit sales. In the year 2000, we sold 5 million homes, 5.2 million. Last year, we sold 4.9 million. The year before, we sold 5 million. So we essentially were at the same level of the year 2000. So you may say, well, maybe this is normal. We should be adjusted to normal. But look at the very bottom, population. We have 37 million additional people living in the country, yet we have the same number of home sales. And other factors like mortgage rates are much lower. So you say there is some kind of mismatch, and that this mismatch is that there's a sizable pent-up demand that is developing. Where are these people living? Well, they're living with additional roommates. They're living in parents' basement. But all this living in parents' basement, this is not, I don't think, anyone's ideal of American dream. They want to go out, but they need better economic conditions. At least economy is improving. Maybe not robustly on an annual basis, but economy is improving. So this will set the case that many people who are living with parents will go out. People who have been renting for the past 4 years, maybe they're in a position to convert into home ownership. So we have this sizable pent-up demand that will live. So I am increasingly confident that there will be a multi-year real estate recovery. And when I say multi-year, you can visualize next 5 years. How are you doing your business plans? Over the next 5 years, I would say 4 of those 5 years are likely to be an improving year for your business. This is the home building industry for the country as a whole. Home building industry also shows a rapid recovery when it recovers. But look what has happened in the recent times. Directionally, you can say it's moving higher, but look how low it is compared to what it had been. And this is going back all the way to 1970s. So we're not comparing it with the bubble years. We're comparing all the way to 1970s. And the builders are indicating that they don't have problems selling it. They build it, within 3 months, they can find a buyer. During the bad times, it took them more than a year to find a buyer. But now they're saying you build it, it takes only 3 months. Yet the builders are not building it, and you feel like slapping them to say, wake up, just build more homes. But they're not building it because they're running into a unique problem that they did not face before. First, construction costs are rising. Copper, materials, and others are rising very fast. But there's a great labor shortage in construction. Tucson statistics, I mentioned that the unit sale 2014 was modestly down after 2 straight years of good recovery, but the prices went up, so dollar volume was essentially unchanged. The prices made up for the loss in the unit sales. But one interesting part is inventory is down, which means that builders, there's an opportunity to build and find clients. This is the Tucson statistics, shown a little differently, but you saw already Dr. Hammond's graph, which is showing that very lackluster recovery in the housing starts, and therefore you have a little slower growth in economic expansion in Tucson area. Now, multi-year recovery, as I mentioned, I think I'm increasingly confident. One is the direction of the jobs. So it's not, just one pass. It's not creating jobs at a very solid pace, but nonetheless, it's moving in the direction. There's more jobs in Tucson now versus 1 year ago, so more potential home buyers. Another data that I look carefully related to the job market is how many people are quitting their jobs. The Federal Reserve has pursued an ultra-loose monetary policy, zero interest rate policy, along with something called quantitative easing, which is printing a lot of money to buy government bonds. And in the process, trying to bring the interest rate down. So interest rate has come down to this unimaginable low levels. However, it will not stay this low. In fact, Inflation, I mean, another reason why interest rate is low because we're not seeing any inflation and people who are on Social Security benefits, you got 1.7% adjustment. And the reason why you got 1.7% cost of living adjustment is because government is saying there's no inflation, you don't need to receive much higher check, only 1.7% would do. Apartment rents are accelerating, and the reasoning is we have this growth in the rental population and we are not building enough new housing units, and therefore rents are rising. So inflation may begin to turn a little higher as related to this, but as mentioned, we have this fall in oil prices, which is a great relief. Note that back in 2008, so go to that other big decline in oil price decline. Suddenly came back up. So is it going to be a repeat performance? Big price decline, and now going to steadily come back up to $100 per barrel in oil, which means the gasoline prices reaching close to $4, or is it going to stay this low levels? I believe that it's going to stay at near this low levels, or maybe only a modest uptick. One difference between now and 2008 is North Dakota. North Dakota has really increased production capacity for producing oil. And as a result, that's why the oil prices are tumbling down because we have too much supply of oil situation. So monetary policies, we have had ultra low monetary policy, but Federal Reserve has stated they will raise interest rates soon. When is soon? Most people believe that it will be sometime this year. I believe it's going to be summertime of this year. Some people think maybe early part of next year. But the language is that easy monetary policy is finishing, which means that mortgage rates will be rising, and I think by 2016 it will be about 6%. Today it's about 3.8%, so going up to 6%. This is not a reintroduction of the bubble, it's just reintroducing sound level of lending, also taking on modest level of risk. All the lending should carry some level of risk. If there's a zero risk, if you only lend it to Warren Buffett and Oprah, that's not taking any risk. So we need to begin to open up where the default rate go back up to little normal to historical average. So inventory has been falling. And don't anticipate any inventory relief from shadow inventory, those distressed properties. Vacation homes. It's the top 10% who are in a position to buy vacation homes, and given the top 10% has really benefited, vacation homes will steadily rise. And to the degree that Tucson has a large exposure to vacation home market, you will be a larger beneficiary compared to the other markets out there. So the forecast is that I think the GDP will come back to about 3%. But it's not going to close the gap. To close the gap, it needs to grow faster than 3%. But the jobs will continue to expand. And the only thing is interest rate will be somewhat higher, but they will be compensated by underwriting standards. And regarding the residential market forecast, you have the home builders building more, because now construction loan is opening up. Therefore, new home sales will be rising, and existing home sales, after that little slight disappointment in 2014, it will be for multi-year expansion. Home prices will not decline because we're in an inventory shortage situation, so home prices will continue to rise, hopefully moderately, and the big game changer is the very last one, underwriting standards. It's been very, very stringent. I think 2015 will be a transitional year, and by 2016, we may be back to normal in 2016. So this is the medium age of the Realtor members, which means that first-time buyers will slowly get back into the game in upcoming years. Do you have the right agents to meet that demand? But we support candidates who are real estate friendly. It was Vicky Cox-Golder's idea that we should have a realtor party. Don't give money to Republicans, don't give money to Democrats, give money to people who support real estate rights. That picture on the building, that's a realtor, that's where I work, that glass building. By the way, that's the first official green building construction in Washington, D.C., which we can be very proud of, a green building. But it is, we can look at the Capitol, which means Capitol can look at us. So we are reminded that we are watching you. So we are watching you. And here's the one rally that we held in Washington, D.C., where we invited many members of Congress, and all of these people are realtors. And we invited members of Congress who said mortgage interest deduction is very important. It's not a loophole. I say this because even though your business activity may go in cycles, what you do regarding association activity, if you are a contributor to RPAC, thank you very much. But if you respond to call to action, which doesn't cost any financial dollars, just clicking to say, mortgage interest deduction is important, I'm going to let my members of Congress know. By doing that, you are really participating in the democracy. You are protecting the property rights. This is part of the American Revolution, the reason why Britain led the way, American followed and exceeded that. And that's why we have this high standard of living compared to all these other countries. I mean, today you see that some countries in a barbaric mode, but America is, clearly the model. You can say city upon a hill, and you are participating in all this process through this political activity. So I'm coming from Washington. I speak with many congressional staff, many agencies, but this communication that I have in Washington has made it much easier by what you do at home, what you do with your elected officials, and all these messages eventually come to Washington. So thank you very much.